Good evening, I'm Nova Blake, and this is your complete political briefing for Friday, April 3rd, 2026. We publish video of all the latest updates from last morning till this morning. President Trump fires his Attorney General, ousts the Army Chief of Staff, and signs a 100% tariff on brand-name drugs, all in a single day. Let's get into it, starting with the top stories from across the American political landscape. In a seismic shakeup at the Justice Department, President Trump fired Attorney General Pam Bondi on Thursday, ending her 14-month tenure as the nation's top law enforcement officer. Trump announced the dismissal in a post on Truth Social, naming his former personal defense attorney, Todd Blanche, as the acting Attorney General on an interim basis. Bondi's ouster followed months of friction over her handling of files related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation and her failure to secure criminal cases against Trump's perceived political enemies. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth simultaneously ousted the Army's top uniformed officer, General Randy George, on Thursday, asking him to take immediate retirement while the United States wages an active war against Iran. Hegseth also fired 2 additional Army generals on the same day, the Chief of Chaplains, Major General William Green, and the Commanding General of Army Transformation and Training Command, David Haughton. The triple removal marks the latest in a series of more than a dozen senior military dismissals carried out by Hegseth since taking office last year. Iran and the United States remain locked in a standoff over a possible ceasefire, with both sides offering sharply contradictory accounts of where negotiations stand. President Trump posted on Truth Social Wednesday claiming Iran's new president had asked the United States for a ceasefire, adding that he would only consider it once the Strait of Hormuz is, in his words, open, free, and clear. Iran's government issued a flat denial, with a spokesperson for President Masoud Pezeshkian calling Trump's claim false and baseless. The two sides continue exchanging messages through intermediaries in Pakistan, but no direct face-to-face talks have been confirmed. The United Kingdom hosted a virtual summit Thursday, with nearly 36 countries to begin planning how to reopen the Strait of Hormuz after the fighting ends. The call was led by British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper and included key allies who have joined a joint statement on the strait's closure. Britain also announced it will host a separate meeting of defense leaders next week to marshal allied naval capabilities for a future freedom of navigation mission through the waterway. In a major congressional development, House Democrats' flagship Super PAC raised $69 million in the first quarter of 2026, nearly double what the group raised during the same period in the last election cycle. The House Majority PAC called it the strongest fundraising start in an election year in the organization's history. The surge signals growing Democratic energy and financial momentum heading into November's midterm elections as Republicans grapple with fallout from the Iran war and the ongoing Department of Homeland Security shutdown. Republicans in the House are working to pass a revised Department of Homeland Security funding measure that would include money for immigration and customs enforcement before accepting the Senate-passed bill. The maneuver has complicated what had appeared to be a path to ending the longest agency shutdown in American history. Both chambers are on a 2-week Easter recess, and the timeline for resolving the funding impasse remains uncertain. The National Capital Planning Commission voted Thursday to give final approval to President Trump's White House ballroom project, a 12-member panel backed by Trump-aligned appointees. The vote came just days after a federal judge ordered construction on the project halted pending congressional authorization. The commission's approval does not override the court injunction, and the fate of the $400 million project remains legally uncertain while the administration prepares to appeal the judge's ruling. Iran continued to fire missiles and drones at Gulf Arab nations and Israel on Thursday, demonstrating its sustained offensive capability even as President Trump declared in his Wednesday address that the Iranian military threat was nearly eliminated. Strikes targeted positions in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Israel, with Gulf nations' intercept systems activated across the region. The continued attacks underscore Iran's strategic use of its missile and drone arsenal as economic leverage over global oil markets. Senator Mitch McConnell joined a bipartisan group of Democrats Thursday in defending United States membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, pushing back publicly against President Trump's statement that he is beyond reconsidering American participation in the alliance. McConnell called NATO indispensable to American security. His remarks reflect rare bipartisan alarm in Congress over the prospect of a unilateral American withdrawal from the 77-year-old alliance. A federal judge on Thursday ordered the Trump administration to halt what he described as the unlawful termination of the immigration status of thousands of people who entered the United States through the CBP One app. The ruling reinstated temporary legal status for those affected, finding that the Department of Homeland Security had violated federal procedures when it abruptly canceled the statuses. The decision is a significant legal setback for the administration's broad immigration enforcement agenda, now turning to Washington, and the latest actions from the current administration. Here are 10 significant developments from the administration this week. President Trump fired Pam Bondi as Attorney General Thursday and installed Todd Blanche, his former personal criminal defense attorney, as acting head of the Department of Justice. Trump said Bondi would be transitioning to a new role in the private sector. The dismissal leaves the Justice Department without a Senate-confirmed leader at a moment when the department is managing an active war, the longest federal agency shutdown in history, and multiple ongoing prosecutions and investigations. President Trump signed an executive order Thursday, imposing a 100% tariff on patented pharmaceutical products imported from companies that have not reached pricing or manufacturing deals with his administration. Companies that agree to bring production to the United States will face a lower 20% tariff, and those that also enter most favored nation pricing agreements with the Department of Health and Human Services will pay zero tariffs. Larger companies have 120 days to negotiate before the tariffs take effect, with a 180-day window for smaller firms. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed a memorandum Thursday ending the long-standing ban on service members carrying personal firearms on United States military installations. The directive instructs installation commanders to allow requests from service members to carry privately owned firearms for personal protection while off-duty, with a presumption of approval for such requests. Hegseth cited recent on-base shooting incidents at Fort Stewart in Georgia, Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and Naval Air Station Pensacola in Florida as justification for the policy change. The White House issued an official fact sheet Thursday outlining the structure of the new pharmaceutical tariff regime, confirming that drugs from the European Union, Japan, South Korea, and Switzerland will face a 15% tariff under previously agreed trade frameworks. The United Kingdom secured a 10% rate under a recently concluded bilateral pharmaceutical agreement, with a pathway to zero under future trade deals. The administration framed the tariffs as a national security measure necessary to end American dependence on foreign drug supply chains. Defense Secretary Hegseth also fired Army General Randy George, the 41st Chief of Staff of the Army, on Thursday, demanding his immediate retirement while the military is conducting active combat operations in Iran. General George had held the Army's top post since August 2023, and previously served as senior military assistant to former Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin during the Biden administration. His removal is the most senior personnel action taken by Hegseth to date in the Army chain of command. The Trump administration filed an appeal Thursday of the federal judge's ruling that blocked the White House ballroom construction project. The judge's order had given the administration 14 days before the injunction took full effect, and the appeal signals the administration's intent to resume construction as quickly as possible. President Trump called the ruling judge a Trump-hating judge and has argued that the ballroom's security features, including underground bunkers and drone-proof infrastructure, make the project exempt from the court's order. The administration also moved Thursday to adjust how tariffs on imported steel, aluminum, and copper are calculated. Beginning Monday, tariff rates on those metals will be assessed based on the full customs value of finished products containing steel and aluminum, rather than just the metal content itself. Administration officials said the change is designed to prevent foreign exporters from circumventing higher tariff rates by minimizing the declared metal content in their products. President Trump confirmed Thursday that he will sign an executive order directing the Department of Homeland Security to resume pay for all DHS employees using existing executive authority, bypassing Congress as the shutdown drags on. The announcement came as House Republicans remained divided over a path to restoring funding for the agency, with some members seeking to include immigration and customs enforcement funding before passing the Senate bill. Both chambers remain on recess with no emergency vote scheduled. The White House released the full text of President Trump's primetime address to the nation on Operation Epic Fury Wednesday evening, in which the president compared the Iran campaign in duration to World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq, noting that the Iran operation had lasted only 32 days by comparison. Trump told the American people the campaign would continue for 2 to 3 more weeks and promised that the United States would finish the job before withdrawing from the theater. Oil prices jumped nearly 4% after the speech, as markets interpreted the remarks as a sign the conflict would not end imminently. The Department of Justice's Weaponization Working Group lost a key member Thursday when Jared Wise, a former January 6th defendant who had been employed by the Trump administration to investigate alleged political abuses by the FBI and Justice Department, resigned his position. Wise stated publicly that exposing those abuses could only happen from outside government. His departure comes as the Justice Department faces leadership upheaval following Bondi's firing and the installation of Todd Blanche as acting Attorney General. That's your full briefing for Friday, April 3rd, 2026. I'm Nova Blake. Stay informed, stay ahead. We'll see you next time.